The story will begin with a policeman named Bong who wakes up from his sleep because he has a nightmare. He himself has a beautiful wife who is very understanding and is also pregnant. In short, Bong then goes to the office and meets with his boss, who is also his best friend named Yu. Yu then gives a gift of baby clothes for Bong's first child, who will soon come out of his wife's stomach. Then they had a joint meeting with the police to discuss the operation to arrest a drug dealer named Wong Kuan, who was going to make a drug deal with the Vietnamese mafia at 11 p.m. tonight. It is known that Wong himself has been targeted by the police for several years, but because he is very smart, the police need to devise a plan that takes a lot of time. Simultaneously, Bong was then contacted by his colleague named Bo, who asked him to come to see him immediately because there were important things to discuss. After arriving at Bo's place, Bong was immediately introduced to the police officials who were already together with a rich businessman and his son. It turned out that the businessman had planned the meeting because he wanted Bong to close the case of violence committed by his son against a police officer on the grounds that the police officer had forgiven his son and in return Bong would be promoted. But Bong, a firm believer that justice and the law must always be upheld, refused to cooperate. He also put money on the table in exchange for the drink he had before leaving. This shocked those who were there, but they couldn't do anything about it. Elsewhere, a group of gangsters led by an ex-cop named Kong was getting ready to rob Wong of his drugs, accompanied by his henchmen named Chu, Hua, Chun, and Chin. Meanwhile, Bong, who had returned to the police station, did not get permission to participate in Wong's arrest operation due to his rejection of the businessman's son case. But Bong didn't keep quiet, as he immediately called Yu to ask for the address of Wong's headquarters. But on orders from his superiors, Yu did not tell the location, and it was also known that his superiors wanted to fire Wong dishonorably. On the other hand, Yu and his troops have arrived at Wong's headquarters and are preparing to inspect the place. At the same time, the Vietnamese mafia had arrived at the place, but they were attacked by Kong's group wearing masks. One of Kong's team turned off all the police monitors while Kong and the others moved to find Wong. At first, Wong thought that Kong and his team were Vietnamese mafia, but suddenly, Kong robbed him of his drugs and killed him and his men. On the other hand, the police began to attack because their surveillance was disrupted, and they knew that there had been a shootout where Wong was. Then a firefight occurred between them at the venue, even when there was a bomb due to the battle. At the same time, Bong and his team found where Wong's base, and he started to help you. Meanwhile, Yu seems still able to get up from the bomb, and he is even desperate to attack Kong and his team. Unfortunately, his efforts were in vain, and he was beaten to death by Kong's comrades. When Yu could no longer fight back, he asked Kong to take off his mask, and he was shocked when he saw Kong's face, who was his former partner in the police. Even so, Kong ordered his comrades to finish off Yu by throwing him to the ground floor of the building, so that he died instantly. Not long after, Bong and his new team arrived at the venue, but they were too late. There, he saw that you had died in terrible condition while several others suffered serious injuries. On the other hand, Kong is seen giving the drugs he stole to a mobster named Guai. There, Guai looks a little annoyed at him and finishes off all the police because he actually only asked Kong to rob Wong's drugs and not kill the police. But Kong didn't want to hear Guai's complaints and chose to leave after getting paid. When Kong was at his base, he ordered his team to destroy all evidence and asked his team to act normal and not stand out. He ordered this so that he and his team would not be suspected by the police. The next day, Bong and other police officers were seen attending Yu's funeral. There, he looks very sad over the death of his best friend, and he intends to reveal the mastermind behind the attack that killed Yu. On the other hand, Kong has seen training physically, and he suddenly remembers his past, where it turns out that he and his team used to be police officers. Apart from that, Kong is good friends with Bong. One day, they get a mission from their boss, Commissioner Sito. They were both assigned by him to save a rich businessman named Mr. Fox, who has been kidnapped by Wong and one of his team. After receiving the assignment, Bong and Kong moved separately. So Kong first moved to arrest Wong's comrades, while Bong was in charge of arresting Wong. Sometime later, it is seen that Kong has succeeded in capturing Wong's partner. Not long after that, he received a call from Commissioner Sito, who ordered him to do everything possible so that Wong's team would tell where they had hidden Mr. Fox. Commissioner Sito said he was ready to protect Kong if something unexpected happened. Then Kong and his team interrogated Wong's team by beating him brutally. Finally, Kong managed to get information about the location of Mr. Fox was held captive, and he contacted Commissioner Sito so that Mr. Fox was rescued. Elsewhere, Bong failed to catch Wong, and he contacted Kong because he wanted to help. Meanwhile, while Kong and his friend are off guard, Wong's men suddenly bite one of his team and intend to run away. However, that action caused Kong and his team to spontaneously beat Wong's team to death. At the same time, Bong, who had just arrived and seen all the events, was very angry and regretted their actions. Sometime later, it was seen that Wong and his team were undergoing trial due to violating the police code of ethics regarding the arrest of perpetrators. However, at that trial, Commissioner Sito did not want to keep his promise to protect Kong and his team, and the same thing was done by Mr. Fox, who instead blamed their actions. Mr. Fox's statement certainly made Kong's team angry, and they did not accept it because he managed to survive with their help. Not long after, Bong was brought in because he was the only eyewitness to the incident, and he was forced to say that he saw Kong and his team beat Wong's team to death. Even though Bong doesn't seem to have the heart to see Kong and his team's situation, he is an honest police officer and upholds the law. In the end, Kong and his team were officially found guilty. They had to serve time in prison and dishonorable dismissal from the police for the testimony of Commissioner Sito, Mr. Fox, and Bong. Even though one of Kong's team continues to demand justice until he tries to die, no one wants to defend them. So Kong promised to take revenge on the police and Wong, who apparently had hired people to torture them in prison because they had dared to kill his partner. Even the scars from the torture still left marks on Kong and his team's faces. The scene changes, showing Bong and his team starting drug raids at several nightclubs while simultaneously seeking information on who is distributing Wong's drugs. It didn't take long for them to get information from a drug owner who admitted that he bought the drugs from Guai. After that, Bong and his team held a meeting to investigate Guai. The investigation results show that Guai is a former convict who lives in a dangerous environment where the residents in the neighborhood are ready to die to protect him. Because it was late at night, Bong asked his team to return to their house because there was no way they would catch Guai at this time. But It turns out that Bong is determined to go to Guai's headquarters alone to arrest him. Soon after, a fight ensued because Bong forced one of the residents to tell Guai's location, and finally, he met Guai. Without further ado, he asked Guai where he got the drugs, but Guai seemed relaxed and instead gave him some money from selling the drugs. Guai thinks Bong is a cop who can be bribed, but he turns out to be wrong because Bong instead throws the money away in anger. Then another fight broke out at that place, where Bong tried to take Guai to the police station, but he naturally resisted, and the residents, who were his men, forced their way into his house.
恭喜你啊，被我抓现行了！我回警局。
However, when Guai ran down the street, he was hit by one of Kong's team and died instantly. So in the end, Bong could not find out where Guai got the drugs from and who the perpetrator killed the police. After this incident, high-ranking police officers started looking for faces. They took advantage of the success of Bong and his team by saying that they had indeed ordered his men to raid Guai's headquarters, which was known to be very sadistic. Meanwhile, Bong, who was battered, and his team only watched their superiors from a distance. The scene changes, showing Bong, who has returned home secretly and goes into the bathroom to clean himself up. He seems to have suffered many injuries and even lost one of his teeth. At the same time, his wife came and caught Bong in the bathroom. When she finds out he has come home battered, she is sad and asks Bong to stop taking on cases that endanger him. The next day, Kong and his team are seen coming to a crematorium for a team who died to demand justice for them. At the same time, it turns out that Bong comes there, but is treated badly by them because this is their first meeting after the trial of the murder case they committed. While in prison, Bong tried to meet Kong and his team, but they did not want to meet him. Kong finally stopped his team, then talked alone with Bong after a long time. Even though Kong is shown to be very cold when responding to Bong, Bong tries to lighten the mood by telling him that Wong Kun died last week during an arrest by the police. Bong said that it was not the police who killed Wong Kun, but a group of unknown people who killed several policemen, including you. He said to Kong that he was trying to catch the group that killed the police. Hearing this, Kong looked calm and smiled at Bong. Then he gave encouragement to Bong. The scene changed, showing Chiyu having fun with his girlfriend and treating all of his girlfriend's friends. After that, he was seen in a hotel room with his girlfriend and gave her Wong's watch, which he had taken in the previous robbery. When his girlfriend went to the toilet, he accidentally saw a message from someone his girlfriend met and sent a photo of them in bed. After seeing that, Chu threw her body into the sea. The next day, the police found Chiu's girlfriend's body along with Wong's watch, which was worn by her. Seeing that, Bong found out that the perpetrators were Kong and his team. The evidence is not only Wong's watch, but Bong has CCTV of Chiu's murder. Meanwhile, in another place, Kong is seen with his team meeting with a mafia to discuss their cooperation to rob Mr. Fox's bank. Their goal in robbing the bank was to take the money and avenge Mr. Fox's actions to them. In another place, Chiu and Hua realized that they were both being chased by the police and ran away while reporting this to Kong, who was in discussion with the mafia. However, Chu doesn't realize that Bong and his team have tapped his phone, so Bong knows where Kong is. Then he goes out to catch Kong. Meanwhile, Kong and his two team members receive some information from Chiu that the police were after them. So they left the meeting hall in a split way. Kong comes down through the stairs while his other two teams go in different directions. On the other hand, Chiu and Hua split up so they could outwit the police, but Hua took the wrong path and was caught by the police instead. Meanwhile, Bong finally arrives at where Kong is, but Kong, namely to go to the parking lot of the building. Then he snatches a motorcycle. Bong realized that Kong had managed to escape on a motorbike. Without thinking, he jumped from the second floor of the building's parking lot and landed on top of a car. This made the car owner stop. Then he asked the car owner for permission to borrow his car by showing his police license. So he chased Kong using the car. On the other hand, Chiu looked desperate when he instead drove his car towards a traffic jam. That made him almost caught by the police who had surrounded him. But suddenly Chun and Chen came to save him and were involved in a shootout on the street. Not long after, Kong came and broke through the police, who continued to shoot, and soon after that, Bong arrived at the crossroads after taking his car flying and landing a little rough. Fortunately, Chun and Chen managed to get Chiu, making the police chase them to another road. While Bong and Kong were involved in a shootout at a crossroads, they drove their vehicles to approach each other, and a tug-of-war occurred between them. But when they arrived at another crossroads, Bong saw a mother and her child crossing in front of him. This made him open the car door to force Kong away. After that, Bong turned the car around and grabbed the little boy to save him and was forced to let Kong escape. The scene changes, showing Hua being interrogated by the police about his involvement in the robbery of Wang's drugs and the massacre of the police. But Hua remained loyal to his team and chose not to confess to the police. He even insulted the police back because the police had accused him without any solid evidence. Elsewhere, it appears Chiu is being beaten up by Kong and the others, as he had ignored Kong's warning not to cause trouble. The angry Kong even killed him. Because Chiu had died, the police had no evidence to arrest Kong and his team. Besides that, Kong's reason for killing Chiu turns out to make Chiu a sacrifice for his next plan. After killing Chiu, he orders Chun and Chen to kidnap Commissioner Sito at his house. Soon after, they managed to infiltrate Commissioner Sito's house and arrested him, who was relaxing at his house. At the same time, they were surprised by the arrival of Kong and his team at the police station. Kong and his team had apparently come to report to the police that Chiu had disappeared. But they were actually detained by the police for interrogation regarding the robbery of Wang's drugs and the massacre of the police. However, they managed to dodge all the questions raised by the investigators, and Kong kept saying that his goal at the police station was to report Chiu, who had disappeared. Kong looked relaxed and asked why he was interrogated by the police. Then he challenged the police to find evidence if they were indeed involved in the incident. He even arrogantly said that he was ready to be detained for 48 hours at the police station for interrogation, while the police were looking for evidence of his and his team's involvement. Kong's words certainly made all members of the police very upset, including Bong. 48 hours later, the police finally found Chiu, but he was already dead, so the police lost all leads and could not prosecute Kong and his team. Went to the room where Kong was and destroyed all the cameras. Bong asked him why he was doing all this, and Kong finally answered honestly that he was doing all this to take revenge for the treatment of the police and the people who had imprisoned him and his team. Not only that, but he did this to avenge Wang's treatment, who had paid people to torture Kong and his team in prison. Bong, who heard Kong's explanation, was even angrier because his actions went too far for sacrificing innocent policemen including you. However, because he was not in operation then, Kong finished off the police who resisted, including you. At the same time, Bong's team rushed into the interrogation room to report to Bong that his wife was currently being held captive by Commissioner Sito, who was wearing a bomb on his neck. Hearing this, Bong realized that Kong was playing with him, and Kong had indeed planned all of this to get back at him and Sito at the same time. Bong, who was angry, hit Kong, left the interrogation room, and rushed to save his wife. In the end, the police were forced to release Kong and his team because the police had detained them for 48 hours and had no evidence to imprison them. The scene changes, showing Bong, who has arrived at his wife's place and is held hostage by Commissioner Sito. There, he sees the bomb curled around Commissioner Sito's neck, which turns out to be directly connected to his pulse. So the only way for Bong to save his wife is to kill Commissioner Sito without taking him by surprise, because if Commissioner Sito's heart pressure rises, the bomb will automatically explode. However, the situation became difficult for Bong because his wife's hands were handcuffed by Commissioner Sito. After that, Kong forced Commissioner Sito to tell Bong that at the old time, he was the one who had urged Kong to do everything he could to know the location of Mr. Fox when he was being kidnapped. Even then, Commissioner Sito promised to protect Kong, but he broke his promise. Then Commissioner Sito said he did this because he wanted to get Mr. Fox's attention, a rich businessman.
我逼到佢哋行到呢條路，嗰啲係無辜嘅，係我想殺放少度嘅係我貪功。講事，你唔好先聽真話嘅咩？
On the other hand, Kong and his team monitor Bong from afar through a camera around Commissioner Sito's neck. He deliberately planned this, so everyone would know the truth of the case that imprisoned him and his team. After that, Kong began to count down to detonate the bomb, which made Bong panic and instead opened fire on the police, who were about to evacuate him and leave his wife. On the other hand, a sniper from the police shoots Commissioner Sito dead, causing the bomb to be inactive. But unexpectedly, Kong was able to activate it again and told Chun to press the detonation button. Knowing that Bong shot the handcuffs on his wife's hands and got away from Commissioner Sito. Soon after, the bomb exploded, causing Bong and his wife to bounce off. The scene changes, showing Bong looking restless in a hospital hallway, waiting for his wife to be treated. Sometime later, the doctors said his future child had been saved, which relieved him. At the same time, the Central Police came to see Bong and had to arrest him because he had opened fire on the police when they wanted to evacuate him. Elsewhere, Kong and his team meet the Mafia to discuss their plan to rob Mr. Fox's bank, which previously had been delayed. However, the Mafia said he was no longer interested in working with Kong after learning that he and his team were being targeted by the police. Hearing this, Kong was disappointed, so they finished off the Mafia and all of his men. But before killing the Mafia, Kong swapped the flash drive containing the security data of BPA Bank with Mr. Fox's bank, which was brought by the Mafia. Kong did this to trick the police into moving to BPA Bank, so he could rob Mr. Fox's bank freely. On the other hand, it can be seen that Bong is undergoing an internal police trial because of his actions earlier, but suddenly all of his team come to defend him. However, Bong asked his team to wait outside, and after that he started defending himself by saying all the sacrifices he had made for the police. He said that all the problems resulted from Kong's revenge. He said if he was still here, he would never be able to catch and stop Kong. So he begs the court to let him out to catch Kong. Hearing all of Bong's words and his team defending him, the court officials finally gave him 24 hours to arrest Kong. The officer then said that he must return to the police court after the allotted time is up to be given sanctions for his previous mistakes. The scene changes, showing Bong and his team arriving at the headquarters of the dead Mafia. Not long after, A member of his team came to report that there was a body of a bank security guard belonging to Mr. Fox among the corpses of the mafia's men. He said that Mr. Fox has returned from America and is holding a shareholder meeting at his bank. Hearing this, Bong realized that Kong's main target was Mr. Fox because he was aiming for revenge. Then Bong goes to meet a high-ranking police officer named Ma, who is leading the arrest operation at the BPA bank. Bong told all the findings and analysis, which showed that Kong was tricking the police by leaving the BPA bank security data when actually he was moving toward Mr. Fox's bank. However, the arrogant Ma said that he believed more in the evidence his team had found than in what Bong had told him. Ma, who belittles him, orders Bong and his team to go alone to the bank owned by Mr. Fox because he doesn't need them. On the other hand, Kong begins entering Mr. Fox's bank and impersonating a bank clerk. When Mr. Fox was walking towards a room in that bank, Kong and his team attacked him and forced him to open access to the safe where the money was stored. Soon after, Mr. Fox's team put all the money in the safe into their bag, while Kong finished off Mr. Fox for revenge. After that, Kong and his team ran away from the bank. Suddenly, they ran into Bong, so he turned around to chase them. Then Kong's team drives the car onto the sidewalk when he faces a traffic jam. Soon after, a shootout between them and Bong happened. However, his car violates traffic and is shot at by the traffic police, which makes it crash into a shop and get stuck in a traffic jam. Then Kong and his team got down and prepared to escape while continuing to shoot at Bong and his team. One by one, Bong's team members were shot, and several residents were also shot by them. Unfortunately, Chun was shot in the arm. Not long after, the police at Bank BPA finally came to help after they realized that they had been tricked by Kong. Seeing this, Kong started throwing a bomb, which caused several cars to explode, causing Bong to bounce too. On the other hand, a member of Bong's team was exchanging fire with Chin and finally got pushed back. Fortunately, Bong instantly shot him to death while Kong and Chun ran away. In the end, Kong and his team were surrounded by the police, so they exchanged gunfire again. During the fight, Chun was seriously wounded. Chun, who couldn't take it anymore, finally asked Kong to run away, and he chose to die so that the police wouldn't chase Kong. At the same time, Bong managed to catch up with Kong and kept shooting at him until he finally caught Kong in a church. Then they fought one-on-one. The fight was initially dominated by Kong, who managed to make Bong battered. But it's not the Donnie Yin figure we know if he gives up and loses just like that. He continues to get up and turn things around until he manages to make Kong also very painful. Eventually, the police arrived and left Kong with nowhere to run. Meanwhile, Bong, disappointed with everything his former partner had done, walked away and handed Kong over to the police. Realizing that Kong had lost, he then laughed and decided to end his own life.